Good morning, Bryce.
Good morning, Jen.
How was your weekend? Can you believe it's Monday already?
We had a wonderful weekend. My family took in a movie and went to the Children's Museum in Mount Pleasant after church on Sunday. How about you?
My family had a nice weekend as well. We were able to visit Riverside Park Saturday afternoon, but Sunday night I spent time reading for the class I'm taking right now.
That's right. How is your class going so far? I know you had mentioned that you were starting your master's program.
Oh, it's going well. I'm more than halfway through the program and I'm currently taking a class on the RTI process. It's been a nice refresher on the process and has really allowed me to think about the ways that I plan for students who are struggling behaviorally and academically.
That would be a nice refresher for all of us. I know that we use RTI in our building, but I'm not certain I could tell you what happens at each tier throughout the process.
Yeah, I know. I felt the same way when I started the class. However, as we started reading about the three tiers and the specifics that help define each level of support, I started to realize that I knew more than I realized I did.
Now, if I remember correctly, Tier 1 instruction is the instruction that everyone receives, correct?
Right. It's the instruction and content that all our students receive in our classroom. In our building, we all use the same curriculum and have supports in place for those who need additional interventions beyond our Tier 1 instruction. What I had forgotten was just how responsible we were for identifying students who fall behind and are not meeting the mark.
Well, most of our students are identified in the first month or so with the new NWEA assessments, DIBELS, ORF scores, and DRA. Aren't we just responsible for watching their progress and then taking them to an SST meeting if they are still struggling?
Yes, those three assessments are Hillcrest Universal Screeners, meaning they are given to all students in the building 3 times a year to make sure that they are making adequate progress. We also do a good job bringing students we are concerned with to SST meetings to discuss potential interventions and strategies for academic and behavioral concerns.
So what tier do students fall into if they are not meeting the mark based on the first round of universal screeners at the start of the year?
I learned that they would be placed in Tier 2, which is that middle layer of the RTI pyramid. Remember the pyramid diagram we were shown a few years ago at a staff meeting?
I think so. Tier 1 was at the bottom and was the biggest part, right?
Yeah, you got it. That means that it includes the largest number of students. Did you know that students in Tier 1 can receive interventions without being considered part of Tier 2?
Really? What would that look like?
Well, when you think about all the ways that we differentiate our instruction, you realize that not everyone in Tier 1 has the same needs. The ways that we intervene with learning at the level on the pyramid can be powerful for student growth and learning. I even read one day that it could be considered preventative and proactive so that students avoid being placed in Tier 2.
Wow, that seems about right though when you think about it. We do a lot of work trying to get all students to perform the same learning outcomes at the same time. I just seem to have so many this year who are nowhere near where they should be at this point. It seems like most of my class should be in title reading, and I'm only allowed to have 3 to 4 students in at a time because of the number of parapros working in available slots during my time frame. This is so unfair.
I felt the same way. I was only allowed to send 3 of my lowest readers to title for extra support this year, and I have 6 who are not meeting grade level expectations based on our universal screeners. I really had to consider the ways that I could give the Tier 2 interventions that they were missing while they were in my classroom to hopefully close the gap.
That seems overwhelming. Why don't we have more slots available for students who need extra help? We can't control how many come to us low each year.
It was a lot to consider at first, but I realized that I had to find new ways to meet their needs through research-based interventions in my classroom during Tier 1 instruction if they couldn't make it into the supplemental support of Tier 2 each day.
What'd you do? Maybe I could use those same strategies with my students.
I first looked at their needs and started with something basic. I saw that all 3 students struggled with reading fluency based on the DIBELS screener at the start of the year. Then I found a great fluency program to implement with this group of students each day. We now use Read Naturally to work on reading fluency at their level.
Is it successful?
Oh yes, I've seen students score gradually higher on their initial readings of these passages over the course of the past 6 weeks. I also progress monitor them using the Dibbles Next program that our title reading teacher had available. They have all made steady gains.
This seems like something that would benefit my readers as well. Would this be considered Tier 2 instruction then?
Well, for me it is, because I'm doing it during our second reading block when I'm not giving Tier 1 instruction, because my Tier 2 students are in title reading. Tier 2 instruction is described as supplemental instruction. It doesn't have to occur outside the classroom, but it is provided on top of Tier 1 instruction. It is also considered Tier 2 because the instruction is given individually or in small groups.
How long do you plan on working on fluency with this group of students? Is there a set amount of time? I mean, when does it end?
Students who meet the benchmark for fluency or any other subject matter that you are teaching no longer need Tier 2 support and can return to Tier 1. Those who don't make progress in Tier 2 will then move to Tier 3.
That seems drastic. If they don't make progress with additional support, then they need to be considered for special education? I don't think that sounds right.
You're right. If a student is not successful with the intervention that is in place while in Tier 2, then they should be moved to the highest tier, which is Tier 3. This tier is for students who need intensive supports. They are progress monitored much more frequently than in Tier 2 and meet more frequently or for longer periods of time than those in Tier 2.
So, it sounds like there's another tier in place to give students more time and support to make progress before special education is considered?
Correct.
That's great news. I've always thought that if they aren't making progress in Title I reading or Tier 2, then they needed to be considered for special education. This is really encouraging to hear. But what programs do we have in place that are considered Tier 3 supports?
I had the same thoughts when this class first began, and I did some investigating at school. Right now, we don't have much in place for Tier 3 supports. We have a lot available for students who need Tier 2 supplemental support, but not for those who need intensive support.
Well, I doubt we ever have the funding or resources to get that put in place. It's a broken system. Who would want to put in that kind of time in the summer to figure it out either? This RTI system seems like it would work in a perfect world, but that is not where we live.
Certainly seems that way. However, if you think about its potential for students and the resources that we do have, I think we can find a way to make this work. Right now, we have a lot in place to support students in math, but not in reading. We have a lot of reading parapros and the common time in our schedules to make it happen. Imagine just how incredible it would be to have students receive specific supports in reading based on their needs at all levels.
I think that does sound powerful. Maybe we can brainstorm some ways to build more Tier 2 and 3 supports for students at our next team meeting.
I agree. As a grade level, we have a lot of great problem solvers on the team, and I'm sure that we could think of a solution before we propose bigger change to the whole school.
I think this could work. I'll have our team leader put RTI on the agenda for our next team meeting. I'm so glad we had this conversation today.